This is The Resilient Life, where we believe that every human will struggle in this life. Our challenge is to struggle well. I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war, my mom to cancer, and I'm the daughter of a retired Marine. I'm also a wife, mom, author, and president of one of the nation's leading veteran service organizations. Join me and some incredible guests as we explore the value of struggling well through life's inevitable challenges. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. I'm excited about this interview, but I think my husband was even more excited. I'll talk to you a little bit about that, Mark. But bringing to you today, big wave surfer and professional waterman, award-winning spear fisherman. You're doing a lot of great things in the North Shore. Mark Healy, welcome to the Resilient Life.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So great to connect with you. You know, our friend Tim Duba made the connection for us. We'll talk a little bit more about that connection, but I have to tell you, you are our 69th episode of the Resilient Life podcast.
Yes.
And I was telling my husband, I've had a lot of really big guests on this podcast, and no one got him more excited than when I said, "Hey, hon, do you know Mark Healy? I have him on. He's coming on the podcast." And he's like, "Oh, you got to be shitting me." And so, little backstory: my husband grew up in Avalon, New Jersey. It's a small barrier island, and his brother was a semi-pro surfer who died of cancer when he was 18 years old. And so my husband's family started a pediatric cancer foundation 30 plus years ago. And their big fundraiser was a surf contest. And over the years, it became the largest amateur surf contest on the East Coast. And so we have, a ton of my husband's friends ended up moving to the North Shore. He's big in the surf community. And so I have not had a professional surfer on the podcast yet. So he got very excited. He was writing down a ton of things to talk to you about. But, I kind of grew up, we've been married for almost 20 years now. So I grew up around, I grew up in the surfing community with him. I've been to Hawaii with him. We've done a ton of stuff there on the North Shore. I've watched them all surf the big waves there and just been, blown away by just watching waves I've never seen so big when we traveled there. And I think there's a lot of mutual connections too with some of his friends. But, lots of things. One of the first things he actually told me to do was last night. He was like, make sure before you talk to Mark, you go on and you search Mark Healy jumps off the boat at Mavericks. So I did that.
Oh, gosh.
and I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, just Google Mark Healy Mavericks boat. And I'm like, okay, I did. I saw the video of quite possibly one of the scariest things I've ever seen. You literally jumping off as a huge wave hits a boat at Mavericks. And I was like, oh, we got a lot to talk about. So, so let's start with, you're in Oahu. Did you grow up there?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised here. I know it doesn't look like it, but my dad grew up here since he was 5 years old.
Okay.
My mom's been here since she was in her 20s. She's from Mississippi originally. So yeah, got some roots here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. I mean, again, growing up on the North Shore, you're a board's put in your hand at what age, right? Like pretty much when you get a pacifier, you get a surfboard, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, you're in the water. It depends on, your dad usually and your friend group, but I honestly don't even remember the first time I went surfing with my dad. He took me, I don't know, like probably started around 3. My daughter started earlier than I did now, actually. But yeah, I remember just getting, every day was a near drowning and felt like getting waterboarded and kept coming back for more.
Did you feel like, I think back because I've got an 8-year-old son who hates the water. And I don't think there's anything more heartbreaking to his father than to have, he'll play football for hours in the sand, but he doesn't want anything to do with the ocean. And, my husband just like, he doesn't push him because he's like, there's no point. One day it'll click for him and he'll want to get in the water but like, was water just like a natural fit for you? Like you just don't remember a time you weren't in it?
Yeah, I don't remember a time that I wasn't in it, but besides that, I think I just like it because it was a wild place. There's no rules. I've never liked being told what to do in general, so kind of like wild places are attractive to me.
Yeah.
I'm not big on what how should I put this? The pageantry or supposed social fluff around things. I like to cut to the point. So I like that cause and effect of wild places in the ocean, and what you put into it is what you get out of it. It's pretty direct. There's no drama and politics around it.
Yeah. When did you realize, like at what age did you realize that it wasn't just going to be a hobby for you? Like something you did on the side and, put on a suit and tie and went to work, right? Like that it was going to be
Mm-hmm.
part of your profession.
I think it was when I was about maybe like halfway to 14, like 13 years old, kind of in that range. I was the last of my friend group because this is the center of the surfing universe during the winter time. So everything's here. So it's like my friends were getting sponsored. I was the last guy to get sponsored. I sucked at contests always. I just kept doing them because I was stubborn. And I just didn't think it was a likely route. I actually, even though I didn't like being in a classroom, I liked learning, and I'm competitive in a way. So I always got great grades. I thought I was going to get a scholarship of some sort, whether it be through team sports or an academic one. That was going to be the only path because we were broke. But so professional surfing wasn't really a viable option. Like it just didn't add up. But once I got my first sponsor, I'm getting free stickers and sail rack stuff that doesn't fit me, that they're just trying to get rid of. But that kind of like sparked a little hope, like, maybe I'll keep going down this path and see where it leads me, and try to be honest with myself and pull the ripcord if it's not really going to be happening. But it grew.
Yeah. It grew. And then you take that and, there's the path of, competing at the professional level, but then you take it a little bit to the next level. Like you get into the big wave surfing, you're competing in the Ediaku. My husband said, make sure you talk to him about that. Last year, I guess the waves were massive at the Ediaku, and he's like, you got to ask him about that. But, for me, I'll tell you, like I grew up a little bit again in the summers in this community. I've watched people surf. I can do okay on a big foam longboard in Jersey waves, right? When we went out to Hawaii, I didn't even attempt to touch anything out there because I will tell you that like my fear of the water, and I think almost my respect of the ocean holds me back, because you obviously know how powerful the ocean is. And I don't think that I would ever be able to like overcome that fear to get out there and to take that big wave. So was there a point where you had to make that inflection or that decision to take that one wave, right? Like, and I say that metaphorically, like, but do you remember a time growing up where you could have been like, this is kind of my plateau of where I stop, or this is where I say I'm going for it?
Oh my God, it's every big day. It's always been that way.
Every day
That's
you
like
have that point.
that
Yeah.
is that is the norm on giant days. Obviously your threshold and where you start, you know, encountering your edge, it changes, it gets pushed out. It happens a little less often, but it's still a regular occurrence. That no matter what, you're there's these instincts that your body has to keep you alive that are still going to be screaming at you. it still feels wrong on a certain level what you're doing.
Yeah.
But if you've vetted it out, you've prepared, it makes sense, it's possible. And then when you push yourself to actually just pull the trigger, all the work has been done. Now you just have to act and not be paralyzed by fear. And you just push yourself past that, and you amaze yourself with what you can actually do. And all of a sudden there's this whole nother level that you kind of open up. So you're more willing, or you have a better argument to yourself to push yourself again later. I found that I have to be pushed to reach my potential. Almost all the things that have, I think, benefited me in life have been things that I didn't necessarily choose to happen, or they're just sink or swim situations I was forced into. So seeing that pattern happen over and over again makes me know it's like taking your medicine. Go face it.
Tell me about a time when you went to go face it and then you realized, uh-oh, I might have gotten in a little over my head.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a bunch of them, but I've come, I've lost consciousness. I've come very close to croaking several times. But when you're in such a chaotic environment, all it takes is one little element to change something that was unforeseen. Like an eardrum blowout, so you lose your equilibrium and you can't find surface anymore. I almost drowned at Jaws, which is on Maui. The real name of the place is Peahi, but it's more commonly known as Jaws. It was my first time going there, and it was a giant swell, still one of the biggest swells I've ever been there for. And this was a long time ago. I was in my early 20s, and I was tired. I had just had a really bad flu, so I was just in a weakened state. But I was still at that point in my life where every big swell was like in my mind was like the last opportunity ever. I'm like, I'm ready to die over this shit. Let's do this. And and yeah, I almost did. So I was just really tired. I was late in the day. I was already cramping up a lot. We were going to take the jet ski. We were towing in because it was so big. And I was telling my partner, Jamie Sterling, I was like, hey, I just want to wait for one more. And I'm like, I'm going to get the biggest barrel. I'm going to pull in to like a 70-footer right now. Like, it's on. I'm terrified, but I'm going to try. Waited for a giant wave, got the giant wave. The wave did not do what I thought it was. And this lip, from outside of my peripheral vision, it's so tall, it's around that 60-foot range probably. Instead of it throwing out and over me and myself tucking under it, it just landed on my legs, basically right behind me on my heels. And the impact, I remember knowing that I blew my right eardrum out because I had done it once before. And so I knew I was in big trouble. And my vest, I had very little inflation. It was like some Walmart crummy vest that I was wearing. And the zipper ripped in half and it was coming off my arm. And I remember it sliding off my arm as kind of everything slow mode. And I was like, I better grab this thing. I'm going to need it. And so I just hooked my hand and grabbed it and bunched it up while I'm getting ragdolled underwater and held it to my chest. And my whole body, both of my legs, all the way down, every muscle in my legs just locked up in cramps. Started losing consciousness, which is a feeling I'm not that wasn't foreign to me because of training with breath hold and free diving and stuff. So I know I don't have much time. It was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. I had to really take myself into a mental place that definitely saved my life. And just put myself elsewhere in a very detailed way. I still remember the imagery perfectly to this day. I was so focused on it. And then I came up. I couldn't hold my head, I think, out of the water, but it just got really bright. So I knew I was close to the surface. And I got like a little sip of air. And then the next one, boom. And then the second one felt worse than the first. Anyways, I ended up taking several waves on the head before I got picked up. And so the next thing I realized, I'm on the jet ski with my buddy who towed me into the wave in the channel there. And I'm spinning out, like I can't really hold on to the jet ski. It's like the drunkest you ever have been in your life when you're a dumb like teenager and you drank half a bottle of Jose Gold or something. You're just on your hands and knees barfing. So it's like that in the channel, but I didn't want to barf in front of all the other big wave guys. I had too much pride, so I kept swallowing it. And yeah, I didn't realize till like a week later, my friend Sean Lopez, he was like, "Hey, my dad said he grabbed you by the hair and threw you on the rescue sled of the jet ski, and your eyes were like the size of softballs." And I was like, "No, he must be some other Holly." I guess we all look the same. And he's like, "Nope." And I'm like, "Dude, I'll settle this right now." So I called my buddy Jamie, the jet ski I was on. I'm like, "Tell Sean that you picked me up." He's like, "What are you talking about, man?" I'm like, "Tell him you picked me up." He's like, "I didn't pick you up. Victor picked you up." Sean's dad. I was like, "Holy." So there was like at least 2 minutes that was I conscious? Apparently I was, but lights were on, but nobody was home, which is
Yeah,
spooky. I had no idea. To this day, I would still think if they never told me that Jamie picked me up.
that's wild. Well, I think about that, you say you're in your early 20s, right? And so,
Mhm.
I mean, I think any of us who have gone through our 20s, you're in a little bit of a risk-taking place, in your life. And then, now you're married, you've got a 3-year-old daughter. Does that
Mhm.
change things for you? Does that change the element of the risk that you're willing to take?
Yes, I'm much more selective.
You
And
are. Yeah.
strangely, it works out way better. I've had my best results and paddled into the biggest waves of my life since I started adjusting. So I was like, gosh, I should have done this earlier instead of just throwing myself at everything. That's
Yeah.
probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, my I guess framework for acceptable risk is much more detailed now.
Yeah. I mean, it has to change because you're, as a 20-year-old kid, you have no obligations, I guess you could say, other
Yeah.
than making it home to your parents. But beyond that, you're not thinking of the child, the spouse, and so certainly those have to come into play when you're doing things that are, that involve a certain level of risk.
Yeah, massively. That was my main purpose or use case, if I would to say it that way, in life is to be a good father and take care of my family. So I can't let something that is honestly, it's yes, I still make a living adjacent to it, but it's a little selfish for me to take too much risk now. Yeah, so it's just a shift in priorities and being honest with yourself about it.
So how do you decide, again, you look at, um, you've got a 3-year-old daughter that you said you're already putting her on the board. How do you
She
decide?
just turned 4.
Oh, she just turned 4. Okay. 4-year-old
Yep.
daughter. So how do you decide to take those risks with her? Right? With saying like, a little bit of the danger and the elements that are out there, but um, you're putting her out there anyway.
Oh, I mean, it's set and setting.
Yeah.
Uh, she's gonna be safe. For me, the main concern is not just her having like a traumatizing experience and not wanting to go out with me anymore,
Yeah.
which is that's like the classic surf dad thing to do.
Yeah.
Like everybody does it eventually, and sometimes the kids just never come back to it. So I try to be careful. I haven't always succeeded at that, but she's still excited about it right now. I mean, the hack that all my friends who've done this successfully, the main thing is it seems like finding a peer group or maybe kids that are like a couple of years older. Like my daughter is really attracted to like older girls. She wants to hang out with the older girl in the
Of
group
course.
always. So
Yeah.
it's like get them surfing together and let them take off with it. Try not to be as hands-on as I probably want to be, but like let her make it her own.
Yeah. Well,
Um, that's the phase we're in right now.
yeah. So another thing that you do that I find fascinating is shark tagging. So
Mm-hmm.
I read that you will dive as deep as 135 feet into like a school of sharks to tag them, do it all in one breath. Obviously, there's intense breath work training you have to do to get to that point. What got you into that?
So my dad had me spearfishing and free diving at the same time I was surfing, like 3 years old, and it's been a part of my life ever since. So yeah, I've been at it my entire basically conscious life. I really enjoy it. The shark tagging thing is just something I geek out on, like marine biology and everything. I definitely have concerns about conservation and effective conservation, not just Instagram conservation. Um, so I got kind of involved with some shark tagging projects where the researchers kind of had uh, challenges that I could be a useful fix for. So one of those challenges is that most of the tagging or all of the tagging that was done of the sharks in the past, you're tagging the sharks to get a data set on their behavior. So if you catch them on a hook and line, they get so exhausted that there's like a fairly significant mortality rate. They just die because they're so burnt out and there's so much lactic acid built up. But if they don't die, you have this tagged shark. The goal is to get a behavioral data set. Obviously, you're going to act differently if you're almost dead.
Yeah.
The patterns are going to be different. So we could modify a spear gun, get the tags on there, and I could free dive and put a tag in right at the base of the dorsal fin. And it's just like a little sting. It's like getting a shot. Sometimes if you place a tag really nicely, they don't even leave. They actually come back around. So you get really accurate data. You kill less of them, which is good for the sharks, but it's also good for the researchers getting the okay to be able to do these projects. So yeah, I did the first pelagic thresher tagging in the Philippines. So that was the first data set to come off of those sharks. They're kind of hard to come by. And then I did the first tagging project in Japan ever, where we did scalloped hammerheads and Galapagos sharks. And I can't really talk about this other one because I signed an NDA for it. But we did another scalloped hammerhead project. And then I've just done a lot of film work with great whites and stuff out of the cage and helping safety that for the guys filming. And yeah, I've just spent a lot of time around sharks.
Do you have any fear of sharks? Or I mean, I guess you have a healthy fear, but not I think you probably have a different respect for sharks, being around them a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have to have a healthy fear for them or in what they're capable of.
Yeah.
The biggest key to me is just being able to have a good bead on what their potential story is when the two of you meet.
Yeah.
So it's like there's kind of like a framework that's gonna help me anticipate how they're gonna behave under certain circumstances. It's like, why are they here? Is it, they could be coming to a cleaning station. They could be coming because it's been baited. They could be coming because it's breeding season. What are they feeding on at this time? What other sharks are there at the same time, and how does that hierarchy change their behavior? And it's through time and experience I can get a good beat on like, okay, I'm going to keep an eye on that guy. That guy has more parasites than the rest of them. It's more scarred up and it's not a female. So I know those aren't breeding scars. This thing's still alive because it's been rewarded for taking chances and being a bit more on the aggressive side. It has more parasites because it comes into physical contact with things more. So I'm just going to make sure I'm really there's a bunch of sharks around, I'm always going to have an eye on this one and watch how his behavior changes during the day. But it's just like, it's like reading people, you know? It's like if
Have
you,
you, no, I was going to say,
it's,
have you ever had any close calls with sharks while doing this work?
yeah, I only one time I would say like I properly was getting attacked. It was just because somebody was doing something really stupid. I was in the water. It was late in the evening. The sun was going down, and unbeknownst to me, because we were spearfishing and we lost a bunch of big wahoo that we were shooting to the sharks all day long. So they kind of got like, they get more and more aggressive and less hesitant as they become rewarded. So you try to, your best effort to just not let them take your fish, because that's only going to make your problem worse. So these guys got rewarded throughout the day despite our best efforts. And the one guy was on the boat and he was cutting all, because sometimes you just get half of a 70-pound wahoo. And he was cutting all the rough bits off while I was in the water as the sun was hitting the water and throwing them off the boat, getting rid of them. So they were just frenzied up, and I didn't know what I was swimming into coming back. And these two bull sharks tried to eat me, basically. But I got lucky. I managed to get my gun in one of the first one's mouth as it came up. It was like coming straight up really fast, like in between my legs. And so I jammed my gun in its mouth. But as it continued to come up and try to come over my side, like over onto my shoulder. So my gun is like perpendicular to my body now. My hand's on the handle and it's just barely in its mouth. And I didn't want my gun to come out of its mouth and him end up on top of me. You just don't want him on top of you in the water because you have nowhere to go. You can't swim in reverse faster. You lose any kind of like muted agility that you have. And so I pulled the trigger with my thumb and it shot through the corner of his mouth and it ran immediately. And its teeth cut the line of the shooting line that's attached to the spear shaft. So my shaft just went to the bottom of the ocean. And luckily I still have my gun in my hand without the spear in it. And the second one was coming up in the same way. So I crammed my gun down in his mouth and he chewed on that. And then I just like, it's one of the only times I've ever just been at the point to where it's like, it doesn't matter. I just need to get to the boat fast.
Yeah.
Like all bets are off. I'm swimming as fast as I can to this boat. And I was getting hit by a bunch of other sharks because there's probably about 30 sharks around at that point, but only two bulls. The bulls were the only ones I was worried about. There's big silkies and stuff. And they're bumping into me and hitting me. And I just did like a front flip into the boat.
I mean, you realize like you tell that story with just kind of such like casual nature of like, oh, there were 30 sharks. I wasn't worried about any of them except for two of them. Like that sounds wild to the average listener. Like I'm listening to that. Like I see a shark that's this big in the water and I'm going to, lose my mind. So, and I mean, again, I think it's probably you're a product of your environment and what you've grown up around. But like, it sounds pretty wild.
Yeah, I was shitting myself for sure at that point. But I don't know. I guess I'm so accustomed to being good at compartmentalizing things.
I mean,
that sometimes it follows me on land.
Yeah. I mean, that's wild. There's been just on the East Coast recently, I just watched last night, there was a girl, well, she's from the East Coast, but this was just in Turks and Caicos last night. She graduated from Yale, went to Turks and Caicos, and a shark bit her foot off while she was snorkeling, not even scuba diving, just like snorkeling, and like, I think about, I'm like, God, how many times I remember when I was in Hawaii, we were in Kauai on one of my trips with my husband, and we went snorkeling. And I don't like a lot of fish around me. Like I like the ocean. I like to see the water. And my husband, we had the food, and he broke the bag open on purpose, right? And it was just like I was engulfed in, and I don't think I ever swam that fast in my life to get back. to get back to shore. And, you know, you just think about such a kind of, I don't want to say mindless, but just relaxing thing of throwing on the snorkel. And I saw I'm like, this 22-year-old girl just graduated from Yale and goes to Turks and Caicos. And they said they don't know what kind of shark did it, but it came up from behind, bit her foot off. She was a marathon runner. And I'm like, wow, yeah. But we've had a couple here on the East Coast, up in New York. A couple, again, they're no one's being killed, but shark bites, kids out on boards, and and their foots are just getting bit, or their leg, they're coming up. I don't know that you would call it an attack, because they're getting bit and the shark's, swimming away, realizing that whatever it bit into was not what it was intending to bite into. But again, I've got a healthy fear of that, for sure. You talked a little bit when you were, talking about your tagging and, the sustainability of our oceans today. Like, what do you think, being someone that obviously has spent an exorbitant amount of time in the ocean, around the ocean, what do you think is the biggest risk to the stability of our oceans today? Outside of the, like you said, the Instagram propaganda. Like, what do you see? What's the one step to getting it back on the right path?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at it as a whole, I mean, the commercial fishing, especially the Asian fleets, big deal. The plastics we're putting in, big deal. Anything smaller than that, I feel like needs a local solution.
Yeah.
You can't do broad stroke. A lot of these organizations that accept everyone's money kind of try to do that, or say they do it. But I think every situation is different. But on a large scale, it's like nothing that we're going to do is really going to change anything when you have these giant fleets from, like, Korea, Taiwan, China, just decimating things and throwing all their trash over as well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit, outside of the surf world. You're involved, co-founder of an awesome brand that we're a big fan of at the Travis Manion Foundation, and me personally, and that's Protekt. You've got the Protekt shirt on, I see right now.
Yep.
I've got my Protekt Yeti that
nice.
sent me. I do not have a hydration pack in this currently, but I did have one this morning, and sent my son to basketball camp with a hydration pack in his water bottle. So let's talk about Protekt. And I got introduced to the company from Tim Duba, one of the co-founders of the company, and I was not familiar with it at first. Of course, my husband was, because it had a surfing element to it. You were involved with it. The Florence brothers, like, he knew of Protekt because of the surfing community. And so I said to him, I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of this brand Protekt? The one guy went to Navy with my brother. He's like, seriously? No way. I didn't know there was a Naval Academy connection there. But Tim sent us, Tim had talked to me about the product, and he had sent me an awesome package of all the great product you guys have. And, I'm somebody, I want to try the product. And we did, and we love it. All of it, all of the hydration, the supplements, the zinc sunscreen. Tell me a little bit how you got involved in the company.
Yeah, I'm glad it works. I mean, that's what I want people to actually try it. I don't want any handouts. So myself and Tim and Nick, his brother-in-law, we were at a sunscreen company. Tim actually approached me to get on it. He was working to be an ambassador for it. We all ended up getting along real well right off the bat. Had similar visions, similar values as far as, the standards we'd like to hold ourselves to from a product standpoint and everything. And that company ended up being just a disaster. Of, one of the guys, the main guys who was involved, was just a complete turd. And so that blew up. I got a bunch of other, sponsors and contracts. That was like not a big deal for me at all. But just through getting to know him and talking to Tim so much, I was like, you know what? why don't we just start our own thing? Why don't we just start it the way we want to from the beginning? We've always been working for other people. We've had ideas that we know would work, and they get shot down, and then sure enough, it happens a couple of years later. Why don't we just get together? Where's the problem? What do we need? What's missing that we would love to have? And Protekt in the battery of products that we created came out of that. So it was seriously like, Tim got super inspired and sat down, came back with a sketchbook. He's like, I think this is it. I'm like, all right, I'm in. Let's do this. Let's get this started. And yeah, the rest has been history. We started right at the beginning of COVID, which is challenging.
Great timing, yeah.
But that's where it paid off. You know, our approach of wanting to do things right, everything being sourced and made in the United States, that would look like a big issue. You know, people had told me like, "Ooh, you sure you want to do that? That's going to kill your margins." But then COVID comes around. We're not having to worry about our stuff getting shipped in from overseas. So there you go. It's like every time we just stuck to our guns and tried to hold ourselves to some kind of a standard, it always came back around. And I'm super proud of the products that we have these days. It's growing super fast. And yeah, it's just the feedback like yours when it really actually is a benefit to people and helps keep them, you know, healthy and focus on the things that they love. We want our products to be able to be something to where it's so convenient. You want to do it. It tastes good. You're not overloading on sugar, that it keeps you on a routine to where you're not even thinking about taking our stuff. You're thinking about doing the things that you love and being focused on the goals that you have. Like, we're not trying to be top of mind. We're trying to take everything else off of people's plates so they can focus on the things that really matter.
Yeah. Well, there's two things. You know, the first is what I loved about the company right away is that everything is made in the United States. And like, I think as, you know, again, not the best timing to start a company as COVID's hitting, but I think COVID told us one thing, like how important it is for us to, you know, keep our products in the United States. You know, I mean, there's the people that say, I only want to buy American made products, or, you know, but it's like you walk the walk, but and talk the talk. And so for you guys to say, you know, that's no small feat, you know, margins, things you have to worry about from the economic challenges. Like we don't make it easy to manufacture things in the United States. And that's why a lot of our companies go outside and, you know, but making that commitment, I just had on one of the board members for Origin, which is a apparel company, and they have the same type of rigid standards of everything is sourced and made, and it's not made in America, where he was kind of sharing a little bit about like you can put tags, like the way the government, like it's like you can say it's made in America, but like it's actually not. There's different standards. Like their shit is literally like sewn in a factory in Maine. Like every fiber is coming from the US, you know? But you know, to do that, it takes a commitment from the company and a commitment to who you want to be as a company. And I think, you know, I've seen, and I don't know if it's just the network I'm in or the community I'm involved with, but I've seen a bigger push for people really looking for companies and searching out companies that they want to get behind that are making that commitment. So, and also having that understanding that it is no small feat to make that commitment as a company. And, you know, again, there's a lot of these lifestyle brands out there now, you know, that are pushing a lot of health products, you know, hydration, tablets, packets, all of these things to give you a better lifestyle, right? And I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said something. He's a Naval Academy grad. He's big in this community now. He works over at Go Ruck. And I said to him, I said, hey, are you familiar with Protekt, right? Are you familiar with this company Protekt? He said, yeah. I said, have you tried their products? He's like, yeah. And he goes, you know what I love about them? They're not like snake oil salesmen like a lot of these companies are. Like the product's good shit. And I'm like, it is. It's really good.
Yes.
So yeah. So, again, it's one thing, I think you get a lot of like, hey, try our stuff, like, push our product out, right? And
Yes, I get a ton of that.
yeah, yeah. And so, getting that big PR package from Tim, I opened it up and I'm like, this stuff looks good. Like, let's see how it works. And, I've got a daughter that's heading off to play Division I lacrosse in college, and she takes the little, I don't know what the tablets are, but you drop them in the morning.
The branched chain amino acids.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
primer. That
So
stuff
the
is
primer.
awesome.
Yeah, she takes the primer every morning before she goes and works out. So you got a little 17-year-old girl that's hooked on the primer. But even to and I like the range of products that you guys have. So you have the hydration, you have immunity, you have rest. And then, I love I actually said to Tim, I'm like, I got to be dropping the resilience drops, before I record the Resilient Life podcast. So I appreciated those but I love the sunscreen too, because for me, being a family that, again, we're down at the Jersey Shore all summer, and you talk about this idea, and I'm sure it was big for you, but like I'm challenged between the idea of putting a bunch of chemicals on my kids and also protecting them from the sun, right? And what's that mix?
Yes.
And so your stuff was a welcome surprise to our arsenal of sunscreen protectants that don't have a bunch of crap. I'm like, I'd rather have my kids get the vitamin D from the sun than put some of the stuff on their bodies. You see the stuff people are putting on their bodies to protect themselves from the sun, and it's like, I'm not sure that's
No, it's not good. And look at my complexion. I'm very much, leprechaun. I grew up in Hawaii. Like, I am a sunscreen snob. I've used and I use sunscreen. I've used sunscreen every day of my life, basically.
yeah,
Almost every day of my life. And so anything that I'm going to put on that regularly, if there is anything bad in it, like, I'm the person who really has to watch out. So I'm very careful with that, and that's what went into all these products. I mean, I'm half ginger day walker that grew up in Hawaii. I know my stuff is sunscreen, let me tell you.
I love it. So listen, you've been through a lot of tough and uncertain situations, shark attacks, blackouts. Does any of that like affect your approach when you hit the water? We talked a little bit about that before, but does any of that play a role when you hit the water? Are you thinking about that in terms of, when you talk about, again, resilience? Like, when on this program, we talk a lot about getting back up, no matter what is, no matter what you've dealt with, you've got to get back up. You've got to keep going. Do you think some of those experiences drive you as you move forward?
Yeah, they definitely drive me. And as I was talking about earlier, how you have to force yourself to make the decision. And it's not like just like a YOLO blind leap of faith. It's based on, people can see everything that they want to see. All the boxes get ticked. This is the thing to go. But when it comes to the actionable moment, so many people won't do it because it's still just scary.
Yeah.
And it's getting past that point. And it's the same thing coming back from injuries or like really traumatic experiences, from the standpoint of like the big wave thing. I've had to hit the reset button a few times and just see if it was still something for me. Yeah, and most of that is just the hardest ones have just been losing friends and being a part of that, and pumping on friends' chests at working sometimes and not working other times, seeing how it affects their family and their kids. You know, when you see it from the start all the way through the end process, setting up chairs at the funeral, that really gets to you. That's a harder one to come back from. And those are the times where I had to really like adjust and be like, all right, this risk that I take isn't just me.
Yeah.
I'm no longer naive that my actions could really affect a lot of other people that I care about. And so you have to factor that in all of a sudden, and you have to be honest about it. And you got to be honest with yourself about, why am I doing this? Is this because it's the only way I feel special or accepted? Or do I feel like this is what's expected of me? Am I scared that I'm going to lose my job? Things like that. So the only way I've gotten through those is just putting myself back in the general area, in the situation again, where, okay, I'm going to show up for this giant swell. I'm not going to force it if I'm not feeling it. I'll be out there, I'll be in the channel, and I'll see how I react once I get there. And it's very strange not knowing how you're going to react in those situations. I'm going to see if it still comes naturally to me, if it's truly something that's part of me still. And every time I did that, it worked. It came naturally. I had some of my best performances of my life on days like that. So that's not going to be the case forever. I know there's an expiration date to it as far as the big wave surfing thing is concerned. It's brutal. You get hurt a lot. You have to be aware also that other people that you're putting in danger that have to come and save your ass. So like on these big wave days, I'm doing safety for part of the day too. We rely on each other. It's a small group, really. So yeah, just coming back from those things has probably been the most difficult, but again, things that I had to be forced into doing to learn about myself. And in the end, I was more confident in my decision making. And it also led me to, because I vetted those ideas and dug deep into them, like, is this because what's expected of me? Do I just feel valuable or special because of this? Am I afraid that I'm going to lose my job and have to start from scratch on my heels from a financial perspective? Because I've gone through this mental exercise several times, when things like COVID come around and everything and pressure's on, I'm like, this is an easy decision for me.
Yeah.
I know I'm sticking to my guns, it always comes back around.
Yeah, for sure. So in all your years, you're on a board at 3 years old until now. Do you have one moment of the best wave you've ever surfed?
No, I wouldn't say best wave I've ever surfed. They're just all different, and they're special. They're usually special just because of that time and place in your life and a goal or a dream that you've had to do this or catch this wave. You played it, where I played it out in my mind for probably a decade.
Yeah.
And you like manifested it basically. You're like, oh my God, like you can do that. You can have these goals and make it happen. But yeah, there's just really special ones. I mean, just even surfing in this Eddie Aikau event this last winter, it was, I didn't catch the biggest waves of my life and everything, but it was probably one of the most special days I've ever had in the water. And it was just the whole day was magic. It was really, really special.
Well, I can tell you that while you were surfing those waves, my husband was watching them on his iPhone, as he does with a lot of surf content in the kitchen, grilling up some steaks in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But every time I turn around, he's always got a surf contest on his phone, with his earphones in, just watching it and cooking. So, you bring a lot of joy to the East Coast small waves over here. They can live out their dreams watching you guys over there. I always finish the episode by asking my guest what living a resilient life looks like for you.
Living a resilient life. I've thought about this kind of allegory for a long time, to where I think that it's like when you're getting the in-flight briefing on the airline, they're talking about in the event that the oxygen masks fall from the ceiling and you have a child, to put the mask on yourself before you put it on the child. It's because both of you will be in trouble if you don't make sure you're maintaining consciousness first. And it would be an instinct to go for the child first. And that's kind of, I think I'm very much, I guess, a typical male in the sense that I feel my worth is really helping to carry weight or look after other people, make people feel safe, and be a contributor. But having a resilient life is I'm not capable of doing that until I have my own shit together. So I have to have a baseline of having my own mind, my own body, my own finances, my own food, knowing how to get my own food. I have to have that baseline to be effective for others. So that is the part of the resilience. It might not be your knee-jerk reaction to just go and try to help everybody else and you never keep yourself solid. But that just doesn't last. If you don't create a good foundation for yourself, you're ineffective.
I'll tell you, I asked that question 69 times now. And that's one of my favorite answers that's been given this out of every single episode I've done. I love that. I'm going to use that.
Thanks.
I'm going to use that. I love it. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome to talk to you. I'm going to give you a little toast with my Protekt Yeti mug. Best of luck with everything you're doing. What's up for you next? What's your next big thing that you have coming up?
I am hunting. I'm going to hunt all next month and the following month. So I've just been so busy and I haven't had a bow hunt since last September. So I'm going to hunt my butt off here in Hawaii, axis deer. It's still kind of like in the general rut season. And then I'm going to go do elk in Utah in September.
I love
and
it.
then hopefully this El Nino season kicks in and we have giant raging surf for about 5 months.
All right. That sounds like a good plan. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.